That's why we're here. Thanks, guys. Okay, so one thing you didn't get to be a part of, and this is kind of that shift now. So the two observations that I'm focusing on, we have at the beginning of 3900, we talk the system, and then kind of towards the end, we talk a little bit about school accountability, but really about professionalism. So these next few questions are in line with that, and how do they go observe professionalism? So that's why we're having the interview. Yeah. So what does it mean to you to be a professional in education?
Wow. I don't know if anything pops out to you. I mean, there's a few things thrown through my mind right now, but
do you mean specifically like a student or an administrator walks into my classroom while I'm teaching, or do you mean like as a colleague in a PLC?
Could be all of that,
all
yeah.
Of that?
I mean, we harp, and they know this in the program, a lot on timeliness, right? That, and I try to make this in a very explicit point that we're not just having attendance on our syllabus because this is, we want your money, we want you to be in class or whatever, right? Or any of those other narratives that happen. This is a professional disposition, and this assessment of you being on time is me assessing that you can be on time, and if you're not, that you communicate that. So that's something we expect, right? And so what are some of these other kind of nuggets of professionalism that are going to be expected of them that maybe they just are, oh, I didn't realize that was the world of teaching?
I think one of the things to keep in mind, and this I guess it can apply in any situation, is that a parent is sending you the most valuable thing in their life, right? Their child. And they're entrusting you with that child for however many hours that you have them. And so I would expect, as a parent who lives in this community, who has children attending schools in this community, that one of your students could be their teacher, very likely, right, in the future. So I think that I would expect you to act like any other professional in any other field, right? That I think there's this belief, and it's probably perpetuated by the media and by a few, I'm going to use the word bad seeds in our profession, that we're the kind of laid back, it's okay, you get your whole summer off type of mentality, that it's okay to not dress professionally, it's okay when teachers do this, or all teachers are this or that, right? These stereotypes that are built about our profession, and that that's not the case, right? You're going to find that predominantly you're going to be surrounded by passionate, hardworking people who have a true drive for this field, which is why they stick around. So just kind of keeping that in mind, that you have in your possession the most valuable thing that I know I have, right, my children, and to keep that in mind as you're working with them. So professionalism too, to me, extends on that, kind of following that train of thought, that the way you talk to a student, the way you behave with the student, the way you talk to a parent, keep all of that in mind. As an administrator, more often than I want to, I have to have a conversation with the parent, and this is at every grade level I've worked at, K-12, that a parent is upset because we didn't just listen to them, that we didn't at least try to come to their level, as unreasonable as they may seem, at least listen to, here's my concern, here's my frustration, can you please at least just hear me out without arguing with me, without making me sound irrational or just belittling me, which is, so more often than I would like to, I've had that conversation with the parent. And so often in my job, simply listening to a parent has helped the situation. So I guess what I'm saying is, as a professional, you're going to deal with, no matter what job you have, people who are irate, people who are irrational, so that's part of our job, is dealing with that. So just kind of keeping all those things in mind. And then just the basics, being on time, dressing professionally, having respect, being courteous. And as I tell every new teacher I've hired who's not tenured at a site, I say, one of the best things you can do is not burn bridges with anyone, because you don't know who has the ear of the principal who's going to make the determination on the future of your career at this district or this site. So for example, if you're rude to the lunch lady, you're rude to the custodian, you are constantly late with your reports that the secretary needs to submit, all of those things are somehow making it back to the principal, or that teacher down the hall who you always kind of dismiss. Every person has the ear of the principal in some way, so think about how your role as a professional at that site could have an effect on you, right? Or has an effect, and I can go on and on about that topic because this is what we do. So go ahead, Mr. Jeffries, I'm sorry.
Well, that covers a lot of it. To segue off of that, when I talk to newer teachers, many of them have an idea about where they want to be and what they want to teach, and they don't always understand that it's going to be a long process, maybe to work up to where you want to be. And so just to throw out myself as an example, I started at the junior high, and I always had my sights set on high school. And then I kind of I wanted to be with an older age group, seniors, but I had to start with sophomores. And then after 6, 7, 8 years of my career, I got where I wanted. But I didn't just enter the junior high, which I loved, but it wasn't what I wanted, with the attitude of like, I'm just going to sit here and wait and phone it in until my opportunity comes for whatever along, for me.
Yeah.
And so what I'm trying to say, and I'm not articulating well, is like, even if you end up in a position where I guess that's not really what you want long term, you have to teach for the position that you want in the future. And you have to prove to yourself that, like, if I can treat this group of 8th graders like I would teach a group of seniors, and people see that in you, then you're going to start to move up and up and up. And so whatever discipline you're in and whatever sites you have your sight on, it's like you got to really be thinking of many, many years ahead to where it's going to be a process to get to where you want to be. But if you put in the work and you make sure that you're doing the best with whatever particular assignment you're on in that given year, I really feel like it works out for the people that really, really try hard wherever they are, instead of waiting and saying, I'm going to try hard when I get to where I want to be. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I almost feel like now some of my questions may be a little redundant, but
maybe our
I'll
answers
ask.
were a little too elaborate.
No, because they're good. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's rich, and so I feel like you covered it. But I'll ask.
Okay,
so,
sure.
what type of professional would you want to work with? I think we talked about maybe professionalism generally, but so maybe more specific. Who would you want to work with?
Someone who truly wants to work with kids. That would be the first thing, right? So I'm going to go back to something I was saying earlier. If you truly, genuinely are not there to work with students and their families, this is a long time to be in. If you're waiting for retirement, is what I'm saying. That's a long time to be in this career, right? And you're going to become that bitter person that Mr. Jeffries is talking about, and that happens quickly. So I'm looking for someone who truly, genuinely wants to work with students, isn't there because they know their contract is 180 plus days, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And hey, summers and that stuff is all nice. And very quickly in your first year, you realize why we need those days off, right? It's because the amount of work we do in those 180 plus days that we're in the classroom. I'm going to work with someone who's polite, respectful, personable, passionate. It's okay for 2 adults, whether it be with you and your principal, you and another colleague, to have a spirited conversation about a topic that you might agree or disagree on.
Yeah.
But you're still respecting that other people have different opinions, and it's okay to have that in your line of work. But if you can all agree that the bottom line is that you're doing what you think is best for that student, for that school, for that program, whatever you're a part of, then it's okay, right? That's the type of person I want to work with. I don't want you to always agree with me, because that's dangerous too. We don't want a school where everyone's on the same page about everything, because that's not realistic. And if that's the case, then the culture at your site, particularly starting with your administration, is not a healthy one. Because that means this is you do what I say and you do what I tell you type of environment, and that's not healthy, right? That's not what you want. So I want people who are truly just like any other field, right? You want someone who's passionate, who cares, who's respectful, but can respectfully disagree with me. And again, I think I'm going to just say it again. If you genuinely have to care and want to work with students, that's who I want to work with.
It's funny, before I get to Mr. Jeffries, I had a colleague that said that, we talk so much about teacher preparation. What can we do? How can we do this? And he goes, I think the common variable is just find someone who cares.
Yeah,
right?
that's it.
So,
genuinely. Yeah, seriously.
For that question, for me personally, my mind instantly goes to like a PLC member, so someone that's in my department.
Yeah.
So I think to be a good PLC member, I think the best thing to do as a PLC member is to always be mindful of, like in a meeting, how much you're speaking and then how much you're listening, and to not only listen and to not only speak. I think that's key. And then as far as sharing materials, the best thing you can do is if your PLC has like a shared drive or they have a depository where things can be posted that everyone can use, you just put it up there and you send out an email. You say this worked for me, and you say take what you want, change what you want, don't use it at all. And I really appreciate that when people send things to me and they're not telling me this is the best way to do it. They're just simply sharing it with me, and they're encouraging me to edit it and make it my own. And I'm really lucky to work in a PLC where nobody hoards anything. Like if you make something and you think it's cool, you share it, but you don't share it in a way where you're trying to like toot your own horn or try to like show off that you've come up with the best strategy to teach a certain standard. It's a community where you literally share and you respect everyone's professional decisions to take what they want and to alter what they want. And I think that's the key to being a good PLC member, I would say.
Awesome, cool. Okay, 2 more. So This one's a little bit bigger. So what are the professional roles and responsibilities of being an educator, but both inside and outside the classroom, and then instructionally or non-instructional? So like one of the things that the state really wants them to understand is just the responsibility of being like a mandated reporter. Like that would be something that maybe is non-instructionally based, but you can speak to both. And so I'd be curious just your thoughts on that. Just what are the day-to-day functions and routines, responsibilities of being a teacher?
I'll start. You're responsible for taking roll. You're responsible for knowing any existing health conditions of your students. You're responsible for being aware of any 504s, IEPs. You're responsible for, to the extent that you can, like if they have issues going on at home, like custody, things of that nature. You're responsible for maintaining a safe environment, which would mean that, you know, you can't let students bully each other. If you're going to have class discussion, you have to make sure that everybody's heard and respected. You have to be trained in what to do in case there's like a lockdown situation or a fire or an emergency, and you have to be able to act in those situations. You have to make sure that you, like Mr. Singh mentioned, the office will need different forms throughout the week that you're expected to submit, and you're responsible for doing adjunct duty, which would be like 20 hours in and above what you do in the classroom. And so that might be selling tickets at a game, or attending the formal, and chaperoning, or doing roundup, which is before the year actually starts during the summer. And obviously you're a mandated reporter, and so if a student talks to you or writes anything in a response that would indicate that they're somehow being abused or abusing themselves, then you have to talk to the authorities that need to be kept in the loop. You need to call parents. If students are failing, you need to be in contact with counselors. If students are failing, especially as a senior teacher, especially this time of year in the spring, you need to be in constant contact if students may not graduate and they may not walk, because parents are irate if they find out a month before graduation that their students aren't walking.
Yeah.
And so a lot of communication that you need to keep everybody in the loop about what's going on in your classroom. You have to maintain your grade book. Students appreciate if you're maintaining your grade book on like a weekly or a bi-weekly basis, so they always know where they stand in your class. That's what I got off the top of my head.
That was like succinct. I love it.
Yeah, you should write our handbook for this. That's awesome. I don't know what to add to that, because I think that was a pretty exhaustive list.
That was awesome.
Yeah, and while you're doing all of that, you're teaching.
Oh yeah, you gotta teach a little bit.
You gotta teach too.
Yeah,
On top of all of that, right?
Yeah.
That's the reality. Yeah. Great point.
Okay, so this one's a big one for me. I feel like there's some research that suggests, we talk about, I mean, you both talked about like the burnout, right? And that 5 years teachers are burning out. And there's lots of variables for that. I think one of the biggest variables is what we talk about is culture, context, climate, sometimes classroom management, but really it's sometimes it's maybe the site, my colleagues, all of these things. But it's interesting that teacher leadership seems to resurface as kind of the impacting variable, and it doesn't matter where you're at. If you're there contributing and being a teacher leader, you seem to be more invested and more willing to stay in the career at a site, even if the site maybe isn't most ideal. So what would you say that they could, at this particular phase of their development and even moving forward, what could they do to start developing this concept of teacher leadership?
I just feel like thinking of our time teaching 3900, thinking about where they're at in that phase. So one of the things that I always recommend to our students in 3900, and Mr. Jeffries does the same, is sometimes it's out of their control, but making a smart decision about where you get placed or where you want to be placed for your student teaching, right? So part of that is, if you know a school culture or you know a district's culture and you think that's the culture I want to be a part of, and that aligns with my beliefs, my philosophy, or maybe as a community that I want to be a part of, think about that when you place yourself, when you ask to be placed for student teaching. And also think about that more importantly when you get hired to be a teacher. And I say that because if it's a culture that fosters leadership in teachers, if it's a culture that jives with your beliefs and jives with, if it's a culture where teachers are running the show, which is great, right? Yeah. Then that's a culture we're a part of. Some school districts, not so much, right? It's more top heavy, and teachers have freedom, but that might work for you, right? You like that level of leadership and that works for you. So you want to be aware of that. It's a good idea to reach out to people friends, family, who might be able to give you some insight into culture. So I guess what I'm saying is you just want to be, you want to put yourself in a situation or in a district, I guess what I'm saying, a school site that you feel is good for you.
That's awesome.
it's not always your choice, right? Sometimes the paycheck will be, it's going to dominate the decision there. But at least know that, okay, this is not the district that really fits for me, going back to what Mr. Jeffries is saying, I'm going to still do my job, but I know that eventually I'm looking for something. So just be really smart about where you place yourself, where you work. You want, and if you find that after a couple of years, hey, the leadership at this site, the teachers in my department aren't really allowing me to be the leader that I want to be, then maybe it's time to seek another, you don't want to just stick it out because, man, I got 35 more years. I guess I'll just kind of being smart about that, because you don't want to burn out. You don't want to feel that you're not being valued, that your strengths aren't being somehow fostered and grown. And I know how much, as a site principal, I know that plays such a huge role. They play such a huge role in whether or not it's that culture, right? They really kind of are a big part of that culture. So just being really smart about and being aware of where you're placing yourself, what environment you're placing yourself in, I guess.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I would say trying to get involved. Hopefully you're in a campus that you appreciate being a part of, and then to involve yourself as much as you can. So if you're in a high school environment, getting involved with clubs or sports to invest your ability, because one, you're getting your name out there. Two, you're becoming more desirable to administrators when you're trying to get a job. And then three, it's a really fun experience to see students outside of the classroom doing drama or sports or clubs or just really any environment. It's just always fun for me to see them outside of the classroom environment and kind of reminding myself that they're these complete individuals, that they're not just students that sit in seats and have discussion about my particular topic, that they have a whole range of experiences throughout the day, and it's cool to be reminded of that. So I think it's really rewarding to get involved. I know you're busy early on in the program, and so it's hard to make time for those things, but I think that they pay dividends later on. I think they're worth investing in.
Yeah, cool. It's funny, just maybe on a final note for all of us, I just thought we have this resident that's out, in Patterson, and the whole idea of a resident and how that's adopted from the medical field. And I asked her, I said, so when you think of a medical resident, what do you see the work that they do? And I mean, they're going in having to do surgeries, they're going in doing all these medical procedures, and they're just sitting back and observing. I mean, some of them are, but most of them, they're hitting the books and they're learning, and they're trying to develop this capacity to basically help the chief surgeon. I go, when you go into the field, that's your responsibility, especially when I think of you. You don't want to drag dead weight. You want someone who's going to come in with ideas, innovations. I've been doing my homework on the side and I'm ready to collaborate. To me, that's a foundational piece of teacher leadership, to own the fact that you're not just there to be the yes man. You're not just there to be following along. That's part of it. But you're also there to contribute too. And so that's what this great partnership is. And you talked about it too. There has to be some humility too. You can't just come in and boast and say well, I've been doing all my homework and you got to do what I say. No, that's not how it works, right?
Absolutely.
But yeah, just having that idea that you're contributing too, because it's so much better for you with all the work you have to do, to know that someone's competent coming in that you can have a partner with.
Absolutely.
And that you're not going, okay, I got to deal with all my students, and now you, right?
There's nothing better than a great student teacher, and there's nothing worse than a bad student teacher, right? So.
Teachers really can. And if you're not happy with the site, you're not happy with the culture that you're a part of, if you get together with a few other teachers, you can really make an impact. I'm fortunate to work at a site now where our teachers come together and do so much, and they've created this amazing school environment where kids want to be there all the time because they don't want to miss a day of whatever is going on that day, So, and that one or two or three or five administrators can make that happen. It generally comes from these teacher leaders who are saying, you know what, I'm just going to do it. We're going to get together, we're going to organize this, and we're going to do it, and we're going to make it happen for our students. And ultimately, although it's more work, it makes it a better place to work. So you're happier about your work, so you don't feel like it's work. You're happy about the environment and the culture you build. But that really is in the hands of the teachers. Yeah. With administrative support.
For sure. Yeah. Well, guys, thank you. I really appreciate your help.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can. I get to cut this later. That's the cool thing about this program. So they're not just staring at me being like, "Hey, how's it going?"